I'm Ronit Gerber. You are watching Creative Hearts, a show that is dedicated to the creative spirit, to creativity and the journey of ideas and inspiration to fruition. We're going to be joined by some inspirational guests throughout the series. Today I am joined by Sarah Lowther, who has the most phenomenal list of things that she's done. Your career and your life, Sarah, is so inspiring. I'm going to read off my list now just to kind of share with our viewers some of what you've done. You have done broadcast journalism, head of communication, script writing, voiceover artists, webinar moderator, presentation coach, reporter, producer, photographer, presenter. Script writing is the thing that kind of rings in my ears, but you've done so much, Sarah. Would you like to tell me a little bit about your journey, about how you've come to do all of these things?
Well, it actually makes me sound a little bit fickle, doesn't it, with a rota like that. But it started when I was very young. I knew when I was 13 I liked to write, big imagination, and I first started writing for the Hartlepool Mail, and Hartlepool is in the northeast of Scotland, and we're the Hartlepoolians known as monkey hangers due to a historical blip sort of 300 years ago. And there used to be a little children's portion of the newspaper called the Chipper Club, and I used to write in and used to get points and things like that, or free passes to the swimming pool, but I didn't learn to swim till I was 11, so that was kind of wasted on me. But that's where it started, just writing for the Chipper Club.
Lovely. And then from there, what happened next for you?
School confused me. School really confused me. I had my basic school, my early schooling at Dunblane Primary School, and then Mum and Dad moved us back to Hartlepool, where I'd been born originally. And I didn't know whether I wanted to go into academia or sport or music, and I was spoiled for choice at the comprehensive I went to, and I ended up letting the academia slip, because I used to bunk off most of my lessons to go and play the trombone. And at the end of the comprehensive school I thought, well, it's either going to be music, but the writing was still there. And then sixth form decided it for me. Then I went on to journalism college at the College of Further Education in Darlington. But then there was a recession and I couldn't even get any unpaid work at the local newspaper, even though I had my Chipper Club merits. I went to university, where I edited the student newspaper, continued to play my trombone, and started playing women's rugby. So there was a three-way pull there. There was music, sport, but again the writing was a constant.
So that writing was the thread that kind of carried through all the different avenues you've been down.
But you know, when I was younger, when I was 13, in fact I started writing for the Chipper Club much earlier, when I was 10 actually. But when you go through school, I think English lessons can ruin you, because I was taught about the principles of grammar. I think grammar can sometimes stullify imagination. And my writing at the age of 18, I would say, was boring, mundane, perfunctory, workmanish. And when I compare it to what I used to write when I was 10, I thought that school damaged the English, but certainly helped the sport and the music, which was a distraction.
So the thing I'm interested about there, kind of what you were saying, is about the damage that you feel was done, and then how you found your way back to that inspired writing again. What happened? How did you get back there?
I didn't start getting into my groove until I was 30. So I reckon for 10 years. So for 10 years, in my 20s, I had a glorious career. I was a wing woman for Dr. David Bellamy at the Conservation Foundation. I used to write his little bits and pieces, because he wasn't able to write everything, so he had a team of writers for his work at the Conservation Foundation, which was just based near the Royal Albert Hall. I became a presenter for the Peer programme with the late comedian Pete McCarthy, Dr. Bettany Hughes, Rosie Millard. But I would say my script writing it's the first time I'd been introduced to deadlines, and I would say my writing was rubbish. My writing was rubbish, but when I was working for the Peer programme, a presenter called Sabra Williams, she said, I don't want to do it anymore. I had a screen test, and they decided I'd be promoted from writer to on screen. And I would say that I was rubbish for 7 years. But people persevered.
On screen?
On screen, I was hopeless. I was so nervous. I used to have a really tight jaw, and I used to be called the tortoise because it looked as though my head...
So lost that now, I can tell you that.
You're very kind. You're very kind. And I still had a bit of a Scottish accent, because I'd gone to Aberdeen University, which saw me out through the recession. And yeah, I sounded like Mrs. Doubtfire. So I had a really tight jaw, sounded like Mrs. Doubtfire, and at the time I had massive knockers. They've gone now, but yeah, so I had a very strange look, blue mascara, big boobs in my 20s, and yeah, that was my 20s, more or less.
And look at
Told you
now.
too much.
Look at you now. I don't know which bit of information to pick on and take us forward with.
Not the boobs. As you
Why
get
not?
older, they disappear.
What are you actually working on at the moment? What's happening in your career right now that is exciting you?
So after the peer programme in Brighton, after university in Aberdeen, I went to the Philippines, and that's another part of the journey. That was a very exciting part. But at the moment, it's freelance. I'd worked during my 30s. I sold my soul to a big sort of corporate devil in the city, which meant getting up at 10 to 2 in the morning.
Gosh.
For 10 years. And I decided that wasn't terribly healthy. I was made redundant as well, along with 500 people. But at the moment, I have what we call a portfolio career. So I still do financial journalism in London 2 to 3 days a week. I have a radio show in Hertfordshire called Radio Dacorum on a Sunday night, which I love. It's unpaid, it's voluntary. I think it's the making of me. I think life is just getting better. But I also am a scriptwriter for kudos animations, and I do that from home. So I have that beautiful balance and blend of working from home, working in the city, and doing other things I like basic tree surgery and plastering. Not getting plastered, plastering.
So it sounds to me like you've got the eternal creator's lifestyle, where you've got lots of inspiring things that you're putting your energy into all at the same time. That's what it sounds like to me. And then there are the things that really keep you going and keep you alive, and that buzz. And then there are the other things that you kind of seem to enjoy from the way you're describing it, but they're not as fulfilling in the same way. Does that
yeah, there's a combination of things. I'm very grateful that we're coming out of the recession. Which has given me more options career-wise. I wasn't very good at marketing myself, and you know, I would say to anyone, if you're freelance, market yourself, let people know you're there, don't just rest on your laurels. Now, I had a fantastic CV, but if people don't know you're there or available for work, you're not going to get any work, type thing.
What is the best way for our viewers to market themselves then? In terms of what you do, I suppose you're talking about broadcasting journalism, in that
social
arena.
Media, yeah.
So social media is the best place.
First of all, become the best at something. When I first started with the Money Channel and with Bloomberg, there were very few females who were doing financial journalism. So I was one of the first. And so one of the first, and I made sure I studied my craft on a daily basis, because I hadn't been trained in any sort of financial techniques, you know, credit for difference or debt or anything like that. So I would study. So you become the best at what you do, and you look after yourself, look after your health, and eat well, and you must sleep. And all those things, apart from studying my craft, I didn't do very well. But I'm very grateful now that I've learned how to market myself via social media. I was a bit anti-Twitter, but once you get into that, it's great fun. You just don't spam people. You know, when you do a tweet, it has to be value added. There has to be a little lesson. There has to be something of interest, rather than, you know, I've made myself some pancakes and they were fab. I dribbled some butter. So that's it. So yeah, market yourself, but you've got to have something to market. So just be the best you can possibly be, and always be kind. Always be kind to people, because you never know who you're going to meet on that ladder. Because I am colliding creatively with the same people over, you know, the past 20, 25 years. We keep meeting each other in different parts of the world. So always be kind.
I suppose it's always about not burning your bridges, isn't it? Always,
Yeah.
you know, keep treating people the right way with integrity and with care, because you never know who's going to be where in 10 years' time.
Yeah, exactly. And also I think it's hard work to be unkind. I had a couple of bosses who, I don't know what kind of top-down pressure they were getting from their bosses, who were really, really unkind, and I felt as though I was being crushed. That was mainly in my 20s, and I thought, well, don't they want me to do well? You know, I didn't have a mentor career-wise when I was in my 20s, but now, much later on, I mentor people now, and it's really rewarding, and also it's amazing what my students give to me as well. They taught me to tweet, actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
So
Susie, thank
where
you.
would somebody go if they wanted to find a mentor, or be mentored, or even mentor, perhaps?
Oh gosh, that is a fabulous question. I suppose find out what you're good at, and then find out who else does that within your chosen career. And then don't be afraid to drop them a line. No one's too big not to respond to you. So yeah, be bold and just say, this is what I want to do. I admire what you do. Is there any chance you could give us some pointers? And everyone loves, I mean, people
do that,
yeah.
or people actually just step up and say, yes, I'll help you. A lot of people ask you to pay for mentorship, don't they?
They do, and particularly trained life coaches, they deserve to be paid. But I think some of us who, through serendipity, have got to where we want to be, or had a career beyond our wildest dreams, I think you should give a little without people having to pay. A lot of people, especially the young ones now, saddled with university debt, can't afford to pay.
I think that's why I asked that question, is that I know there's a lot of paid opportunities to get, or I wouldn't even call them opportunities, paid options to get support and to get guidance and mentoring and coaching. But actually a lot of creative people don't have the budget or the finances to go out there and get quality support and mentorship. So it's interesting to know, did you pay for any of your mentoring?
I didn't.
That you received? You just seemed to get guidance.
I got guidance academically, but I haven't been mentored in terms of a career. I've studied, I've gone on courses.
Yeah, that's different, isn't it? That's development, that's professional kind of learning. But in terms of mentoring, you've just been lucky and had...
Learned on the job.
Lovely.
It would have been, I would have loved to have had a bit more guidance. I would have loved to have been told that I looked like a tortoise or a turtle with my stiff jaw. I wish someone had bothered to tell me. I wish someone had said, you know, your jacket's too tight, you should be wearing looser clothing. Or just telling me how to use my voice, to look at the camera. I don't know, I think in the 80s and 90s everyone was in a rush. Everyone was in a rush, and everyone assumed that everyone knew what they were doing, and we didn't, quite frankly.
But you seem to have been able to stick with it. I'm interested also in opportunities, because when you look at your list of things that you've done, and I know you said you freelance, but in a way that makes it harder and then more of an achievement, really, more of an impressive achievement, because you've had to go it alone. You haven't had the umbrella company to kind of pull you along and grow within. Although you've done some of that, you seem to have had so many different opportunities come your way, by the sounds of the way you described it, if I'm understanding it correctly. So I'd love to know a bit more about how those opportunities came, how you decided which ones to go for, because sometimes loads of them come like buses, don't they, opportunities, and other times you're sitting there for weeks going, what am I supposed to do? Where am I going? And you feel quite stuck. So,
well, my parents encouraged me to try everything. So I think it stems from encouragement that you get when you're very young. So although I didn't get career mentorship, what I did get was support from a very young age. So when I brought home a trombone, when Mum and Dad were expecting me to bring back an oboe, they just put their earplugs in and let me do the F&B march for 6 months before things started to get better. But no, my dad, he had a freelance career as well, and he said, you know what, my customers have become my friends. And then I had Mum, who was the support and the nurturer at home. And so I suppose I grew up feeling slightly slightly fearless. Also, there wasn't that much choice. So you did apply for everything. And way back in 1999, I saw this tiny advert at the back of the Guardian newspaper, and I was horrified at the spelling mistakes. Horrified. Because remember, grammar had been drummed into me.
Yes.
It had ruined my writing, but it had been drummed into me. And I thought, that is the worst advert I've ever seen in my life.
In a newspaper?
In a newspaper. So I wrote to them, ticking them off, saying, I don't know who placed your ad, but you definitely need an editor or a writer. And it turned out that it had been planted by 10 Downing Street.
Oh my goodness.
And I got the job working as a civilian editor for 10 Downing Street. And I remember the first day I worked at 10 Downing Street, Cherie Blair opened the door, very fragrant and flowing. She wore really sort of, I don't know, chiffony type clothes when she wasn't in her, you know, barrister QC garbs. And then I worked around that big table that everyone sees.
Wow.
Because it's actually a really small building. It's a really, really small room. And just before I had my final interview, there were all these leaflets, and they kept me waiting. I was reading this leaflet, and then a guy came in and he said, "Oh, what do you think of those leaflets then?" And I said, "Well, this one in particular is really good. You know, it's talking to me in layman's terms, I can understand it." And he said, "Oh, that's good, because I wrote that one." So that was it. That was it. I was in, and I was sent on some really bizarre tasks for it was called the Strategic Communications Unit. So don't be afraid, you know, do read those little adverts in the back of the national newspapers. Don't be afraid don't assume that thousands are applying for it.
Can I tell you what's interesting though, is that what I love about that story, it wasn't just, you didn't just apply for a job from the sounds of it, you wrote to tell somebody that they'd spelt something wrong. As in, you weren't afraid to put yourself out there and to stand up for something that was important to you, and that opened up a door. Was it an actual job advert, or was it just
It was a job advert.
But there was a lot of mistakes in there.
There was a lot of mistakes. I mean, they're quite popular adverts now, but in 1999 it wasn't as popular to deliberately put in spelling mistakes.
So they were testing to see who had the guts to kind of really...
Unless it was one of those hidden job adverts for MI5, and I didn't quite make the grade, so they just gave me a civilian editor's job.
I've seen one of those adverts. They're not very hidden. I was quite surprised actually to see an MI5. I kind of thought, hold on a minute, are you serious? They advertise for jobs here in the newspaper? It's a bit weird, isn't it?
It is.
But I just love the tenacity and the courage and the guts to kind of put yourself out there. And I think for any creative person, that's the thing that may hold us back in a way, is that fear of putting yourself out there. And I think you've done that time and time again, like with 10 Downing Street and having a go at them.
Yeah, I didn't know it was 10 Downing Street.
Did you not?
No, I didn't.
So what did the advert say?
It more or less said they were looking for editors, written really awfully without punctuation, and then it said SRC. I didn't even know who SRC was, and I told them off for using an acronym. I said, how on earth? You know, who are you, type thing. So you
weren't actually applying for a job then?
I didn't know what.
You were just telling them off?
Yeah, so I didn't really know. It just really, really bothered me. It bugged me to death. It really bugged me to death. So,
wow, fantastic story. I love it.
So yes.
So in terms of your jobs that you've had, was that one of your most exciting?
No.
Which one was?
Because I think the Strategic Communications Unit, which then Alistair Campbell went on to run, was just finding its feet at the time, and I don't really think they knew what their purpose was. Mm-hmm. But they hired me for 6 months, and it was quite a good hourly rate, and I bartered with them as well. I thought what they offered me initially was pants. So I said, oh, no. By the time I take out my travel card, it's not worth my while. So even if, you know, you're being offered jobs at Buckingham Palace or the finest restaurants or, you know, investment banks, you barter. You've got to have a sense of value. And I didn't really know what my value was then. I'd been working in a third world country for 3 or 4 years. And it was a barter economy, but I didn't know what my value was back in the UK. So you just ask for a little bit more. But if you ask for more, then you give 150% as opposed to 130.
So value is quite important, isn't it? To know your worth and to also not sacrifice your own sense of...
Yeah, but you've always got to do your best. You know, even if you feel tired, you always do your best, because, you know, somebody else could have your job. And you've also got to have that sense of achievement and satisfaction at the end of the day. So you might be dog-tired on a Monday, but you always give your best. Don't hide by the water cooler, don't keep taking fag breaks, whatever. You do your best, and you make sure that if you haven't completed a project, you've at least helped somebody else achieve their goals.
I think doing your best at anything that you set your mind to do means that you will value yourself. The two go very much hand in hand. If you're not doing your best and you're just kind of half-heartedly doing something, you're not going to value, you're not showing much value, and you won't value it. And then at the same time, you won't necessarily have that expectation of value from others as well. So I think it starts with feeling your own sense of worth when you go out there. And you really went, and firstly you stood up for what you believed in. It opened up doors for you, and then not only that, but you showed them you were worth something because you didn't give in. I love it. Very exciting.
I need you to do my marketing, because I didn't get into marketing until quite late. But marketing, I think, is a scary word for a lot of people. But it literally, it isn't scary. It's have fun, become the best that you can be, and then use social media. You can have your own YouTube channel. You can send some cheeky, mischievous, worthwhile tweets. And use Facebook wisely. Facebook's great. I know that all the young ones are fed up that us middle-aged people are now using Facebook as our channel. But use it wisely, and never be rude. Never be rude about anyone.
What does using it wisely mean?
Don't spam people. You know, if people, you know, they become your friend or they become your followers, they want to know something that's interesting. You know, not just that you've woken up and walk the dog type thing.
It reminds me actually of somebody, just to digress a little bit, because I think it drives the point home, who was looking for jobs as a babysitter or a nanny on Facebook. And she had all those pictures of low tops, bikinis going to the screen, you know, being all completely inappropriate. And I kept looking at it, and I've got, you know, children, and I kept thinking, really? Really? Yes. You honestly think somebody's going to employ you? And I had to actually have a word, because I don't know why, I'm getting a few inquiries but not many, and nobody's hiring me. And I said, sweetie, I love you and I want you to do well, and you're amazing with children, but look at the stuff that you're putting out there. So that's what you mean about using things wisely, isn't it? Is to kind of think about what you're trying to achieve with that page and keep
well, it's your poster. It's your poster to the world. So yeah, just be careful. Yeah, just be careful what you put on there.
Lovely. And you mentioned overseas that you worked in a third world country. What were you doing there?
It's less third world now. That was the Philippines. So my ex-husband and I lived there for 3 years. And I was what you call a trailing spouse. I was told that I couldn't work. When I went out there, it was very difficult to get visas for the spouse of the person who was going. So my ex-husband worked for Nortel, a Canadian telecommunications company. He went out there before me, and so I was thinking, right, what am I going to do when I get out there? And I'd always wanted to learn to be a proper photographer. And this is about serendipity. You see, I went to it was a church in Manila, and there was a poster saying Mandi Navasero photography courses starting October, and I thought, well, I want to do it. And this was back in the day where it was 35mm, and it was black and white, and it was dark room photography. And this woman was my mentor. Now, although I paid for the course, she set me on a journey that eventually I could charge for my photographs. I had my own dark room. A lot of my friends in the Philippines were popping out babies left, right, and centre, so I was the official baby photographer. But then I won a photographic competition in the Philippines, and then continued to do photography. And when I came back to Hertfordshire and had a couple of exhibitions called the Dark Side. Actually, it wasn't the Dark Side. What was it? The Far Side of Pot End, and that was really good fun. So I did that, and thought, right, well, that I can earn in the Philippines. But I was in a pub one Wednesday afternoon. I met someone, and I had bionic hearing, and I heard that a television station was starting up. And I said, oh, well, and I said, excuse me, but I was a producer for BBC Two, and I was a presenter for the peer programme for Meridian Television. Can I come and tutor your producers? I know a little bit of Tagalog. Can I come and work behind the scenes? Can I do anything unpaid? And I ended up being the face of their channel. I had a show called, because it was a long time ago, CityNet World Business News. Mm-hmm. So that's when my financial career started. And it was great fun, but it had a peril. I was kidnapped July 26, 1996, in the Philippines, but I escaped. It was a very short-lived kidnap. And,
wow. And
it was after that experience in 1996 that I developed my balls and became, and unfortunately I went through a period of feeling invincible. And when I came back to the UK, I would go for anything. So perhaps I wouldn't, without that experience, perhaps I wouldn't have gone for that advert placed by 10 Downing Street.
Was that the kidnapping that changed your way of doing things, seeing things?
It's when you have an experience like that, you do get a sense of, because I'd survived something that was so scary. It didn't harm me because it didn't have time to harm me, although my head was I was in shock for a good week afterwards. You appreciate life slightly more, because you always think that you're going to live forever. Mm-hmm. So you appreciate it more, and you are determined to make the most of it. But after that, I took on some dangerous assignments in the Philippines. I did famine relief. I took photographs of a famine that hadn't been reported because it was politically insensitive at the time. Mm-hmm. And I was told that if I printed those photographs, I would be leaving the Philippines in a box. So it was one of the last things I did in the Philippines was report on a famine that was being kept under wraps. It was affecting the mainly Muslim population in the Philippines. Mm-hmm. It coincided with the Philippines' first democratic elections, and the Philippines wanted to present this face to the world, which is, we're fine, we need a bit of money from the Asian Development Bank and the IMF, but don't worry, we're good to pay it back. And they didn't want to reveal to the world that there was a famine, and there was diseases like measles killing thousands of children. And I took photographs of the measles. I took photographs of kids that had no meat on them whatsoever. It was just skin covering a skeleton, basically. And because I'd escaped from this kidnap, I took on assignments that I wouldn't take on now. You wouldn't see me in Beirut or Gaza. I'm not brave enough. I'm not strong enough physically. I think for journalists to go out into war zones, you must be fit, and you mustn't put your camera crew in danger, and you've got to be sensible, because they'll have you, as we know from the headlines these days.
It's quite scary out there at the moment for those in the front line of all this kind of terror and war.
Yeah, and learn the local language as well.
Somebody needs to report on it, though.
Someone does. But I think you've got to be the best you can. If you're going to go to a country where you're covering war zones in particular, you learn their language. It's polite, mm-hmm. But boy, does it get you out of tricky situations. It was because I knew the Tagalog for fire, which is apoy, that I got out of that kidnap situation in the Philippines. So I had basic knowledge of Tagalog, and that one word helped me attract enough attention to save me. After I'd managed to get out of the car, I'd got out the window.
What was the context of the kidnapping? I'm sure that our viewers are very interested, because we kind of skip past that.
Well, it was actually a case of mistaken identity. Oh. They'd got the wrong person.
Because there's a lot of blonde ladies in the Philippines.
No, there wasn't at the time. Basically, there was, so I was in the live studio, and then there was a lady called Dianara Torres, and she'd been Miss Universe, if I'm getting this right, because it was a long time ago. And she'd married a very, very wealthy Filipino. So she was in one studio, and I was in another. Now, I don't know what the kidnappers were thinking. She was chauffeur driven, But at the end of my show at 10 o'clock at night, I'd be on Edsa, the main route back to McCarthy, getting a taxi. And it was a Friday night, and there was a taxi there. I thought, yes, hallelujah, because normally I had to wait for ages. Got into this taxi, and I thought, oh, taxi driver doesn't smell very nice, which is very unusual. The Filipinos' diet makes them kind of fragrant. Because you and I have milk and cheese, that's what gives us BO, basically.
Oh, okay.
And the Filipinos don't have milk and cheese in their diet, so it's really unusual for them to have a scent. And this taxi driver had a scent, and I was thinking, oh gosh, he doesn't smell very nice. And then I said, oh, Makati diretso po, which means straight to Makati. It was a straight route, and he took me right. So I was telling him in broken English, Taglish, you're taking me the wrong way. And it's just straight, and I thought, no, he's probably adding on, adding a couple of kilometres to the journey, so I have to pay more. And then he pulled over in this side street, wound down his window and said to this little boy, we've got her, Dianara Torres. I was like, no, I'm Sarah Lowther, not Dianara Torres. And then I realised I was in trouble, and the way we were going is that we were heading out into the sticks. And at the time, mainly Chinese nationals, kidnapping was one way to earn pennies. And I thought, they're going to find out I'm not Dianara Torres. They're going to do terrible things to me. They're going to violate me in the worst way, and then they're going to shoot me. And I thought, I've got to come up with a plan. And I knew, we were on this road, and I knew I only had 3 more traffic lights before we were out in the countryside. Don't ask me how I know, but the brain starts to mind map like crazy. And
so it's your adrenaline that
your brain is an amazing thing. Trust it, listen to it. But then I realised that the getaway car was old, and although I couldn't get out of the car, the sealant on the window was perished. It was old. So what I did, I just started screaming at the top of my voice, making lots of noise, and the noise covered me pulling away the sealant on the window. And got to a traffic light, and I whacked that window out. Now at the time I had malaria, so I was very thin. I got that on a film set in the Philippines. Any case, as an extra. Got out the window, and I could hear my mum saying, and don't forget to bend your knees. Fell out the window, remembered to bend my knees, and then shock kicked in, and I couldn't move. I was too scared, and I was hyperventilating, and I was being pulled back into that taxi. And I thought, I've got no strength left in me. They can have me. I've had enough. But then I remembered that word, apoy, fire. And so I started to shout, fire, fire. And immediately, people coming out of nowhere. Is it my family? Is it my kids? Is it my car? Is it my little shack where I sell, buns from? Because if you shout help, people in the Philippines would just go, oh, nothing to do with me. But because I shouted fire, I got help. And I was immediately surrounded by people. The taxi driver was saying, oh, she hasn't paid her fare. And I went, he's going to do bad things to me. I actually had to pay this guy 40 pesos, which was £1.
For kidnapping you?
For kidnapping me, because he was keeping up this ruse that he was a taxi driver. And then I got a proper taxi home at great expense and felt quite poor for a couple of days afterwards.
Not at all surprising. So how did you pull yourself forward from that experience? I mean, that's quite something. I know a lot of viewers and people that I come across have ups and downs and highs and lows, and I was going to ask about that, but that's a pretty significant challenge to overcome, that feeling of being so, I mean, you almost, who knows what could have happened, and you've managed to then pull yourself out. How did you do that?
Talked about it non-stop, but not to my parents. My parents were at home in the UK. I was in the Philippines, several thousand miles away. I didn't tell them for 2 years. Because they weren't that happy about me being so far away in any case. And yeah, I talked about it and talked about it and talked about it and talked about it until I talked about it so much that it sort of gained mythological status in my mind. It was sort of like, oh, that never happened to me, that's someone else's story. But of course it did leave the remnants of feeling invincible, and that's when I started to work for other Filipino companies. I would take on the assignments that no Filipino would do, because my mindset had changed, and it's not a good thing. It's not a good thing to feel invincible. It's a bad thing.
I don't know. I'm going to challenge that somewhat. Invincibility is risky, but look at what you've achieved from that challenge. I mean, a lot of people wouldn't have been able to come back from that, and you had to come back fighting. So I guess is that you're saying be safe and sensible and wise about your choices, but at the same time that fight that got you through, that got you to pull that rubber off the door and do what you needed to do is the one thing that's probably pulled you forward. And for people who are stuck or who are going through challenges, and hopefully not as life-threatening as that, but other kinds of challenges that can feel just as insurmountable, need to find the fight inside of themselves to pull forward, because I think that's...
You're very kind.
I think it's something that you should really... You can own that. It's an amazing and inspiring quality to have. When I've seen so many people broken who can't come back because they've lost the fight.
Couple of lessons there. Keep your nails short. Girls, with your French polished nails, keep your nails at a sensible length, because I've always had sensible nails, which is good when you're trying to peel the sealant off the back of a getaway car. But no, I went the other way. So when I came back to the UK, if I ever saw any fights, I used to get in there and I used to say, stop fighting, it's too early in the morning. I remember there was one fight on a very packed Victoria Line platform, and I went in there, I waded in there, and there was a fight. There was one guy with a big bloodied nose, and this big guy was kicking him in the kidneys. And initially I walked away, and then I thought, actually, he's been kicked in the kidneys, he's going to die. So I just went back and said to this big bloke, and I had my little black plastic briefcase. I pushed this guy back, and I just said, it's too early in the morning. That's all I could think of saying, it's too early in the morning. And then all the blokes went, oh, we'll take over from this. But so
it took you stepping up and doing something for all the others to kind of...
Yeah, but I wouldn't do that now, because so many people, hold knives and have weapons and stuff. But no, I went to the extremes, total extremes, so yeah.
It's kind of like you found that 10-year-old that you were speaking about before it was all trampled out of you.
The grammar of life.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
so you had that incident took you back almost to that spark that we do lose through life, through
totally.
Challenges, through fears, and all the rest of it. So would you say that was your biggest obstacle, the kidnapping that you've overcome, or have there been?
No, it was the grammar. Else? It was
the grammar. Was your grammar?
Being taught grammar at school,
mm-hmm.
Because I used to write with flair and imagination. Then you taught grammar, and then I did French as well. And you taught about past participles, and I'm sure all the French teachers are going, actually, you've probably not taught that at all, Sarah Lowther. And it was just getting that imagination back, because I had to write in a very stilted way when I worked for Bloomberg. There were certain words we couldn't use, like expectations. Expectations was a bad word. And it's like,
why?
It was just, we used to talk about it's beaten analyst expectations. So Tesco's has made £130 million, which came in above analyst expectations. We were allowed to say predictions, but got a bit boring after a while. So it was a very, very stilted way. And then after I left Bloomberg, and they treated me very well, by the way. Mm-hmm. I was treated exceptionally well. I think anyone who went to work at 3 o'clock in the morning for 6 years was treated very well. I was in the basement, no one bothered me as long as I was broadcasting, and I was paid well. Yeah, I loved it. But 500 of us were made redundant in 2009 after the banking crash. That's when I went freelance, and I realised that I couldn't write the way I did at Bloomberg, and it was time to get back into the 10-year-old, the script writing and the plays, which I started to write for the village I live in, just above Berkhamsted.
Called Potter's End,
Potton End. A lot of people get it confused with Potter's Bar,
yeah.
But Potton End.
Potton End in Berkhamsted is where you're from.
Yeah, just the top of Berkhamsted. It's a lovely place.
And you're script writing there?
Script writing there. So I do it corporately for Kudos Animations, which a lot of people now realise that websites filled with text put people off. sorry, that's my stomach. Exciting. A lot of people, shut up. So a lot of people would cram their website full of words, but people don't have the time now. People like to see a nice 1-minute viral video, whether you shoot it at home or whether you hire someone like Kudos to do an animation. And it's very visual now. People don't want to read pages and pages and pages, drop-down menus, etc. They just want to know, in a nutshell, in a minute, what on earth your company does. And so there's a big renaissance in animation, and I'm lucky enough to be involved in that. But way back in the Philippines, I wrote a 13-part cartoon series about the Ramayana, which is our equivalent to sort of Adam and Eve type thing. So as long as I continue script writing and I'm involved in animation, I can see myself being very, very happy indeed. I'm very surprised I'm still broadcasting. I trained to be an editor in Final Cut with 21st New Century Media about 3 years ago. Never thought I would use it, but a month ago my technical director and editor was off and we were in a pickle. We needed an editor and I went, I can do it. So, you know, when I stop being in vision, at least I know I can always write and edit. So that's another lesson, which is be the best at what you do, but have a few strings to your bow so that you can do anything. And you know, if one avenue of your career ends, then there's something else that you can pick up from.
Well, at the end of the day, the creative journey is a journey, it's a process, isn't it? And you never know what doors are going to open and what opportunities are going to come. So everything, the skills, and you mentioned the people already, but also the skills that you gather along the way are going to open up even more doors, and it seems to have definitely done that for you, hasn't it?
I've been very lucky, but I'm quite chatty. I think as soon as you stop taking an interest in people, that life's over. It's not just about being, you know, inward looking, it's finding out about other people and chatting to people on the train. I tend to sit in the same seat in the same carriage when I go into town, London, and there's 3 of us chat away, and it's fantastic. For example, I didn't know that the guy I sit next to, his son has actually been on my radio show. His son's a young musician. So I'm so sorry about my stomach. Yes, what another lesson, yeah, keep well fed. So yeah, it's all about, you know, people talk about, is it 7 degrees of separation? Yeah. I think it's less than that now.
I think it is, with social media and the internet and everything. It's just, it can't be 7 degrees or 6 degrees or however, 6 degrees of separation.
Yeah, I think it's getting less and less.
I mean, you touched on this very briefly, but do you ever get low or depressed, or feel a bit down? I know that you're quite bubbly and cheerful, but there are ever moments when you kind of feel a bit lost.
If I burn out, I'm rubbish at sleep. I've always been a really poor sleeper. So for 7 years I had a paper round. So I used to be up at 4:30 in the morning. I loved being the one first up in the morning. But I never had that 8 hours sleep. So
that's why you keep saying sleep, because it's note to self here, isn't it?
Yeah, note to self, and then so of course it was a natural progression to do a couple of breakfast shows. Yeah. But you must sleep, and occasionally I just fizzle out. I burn out, and then get cross with myself, and get low.
I mean, I'm sorry to take us there, but can you describe that for us? What does low look like for you, or feel like?
A sense of worthlessness. It's because you can't think. You forget about the best bits about yourself. And then knowing that you have to lie down and have a rest, but then beating yourself up about it because you know that you've got the allotment to do, or you haven't painted the shed yet, which is what I'm doing this afternoon actually. And having this battle, this inner turmoil. It's okay to have a rest. And it's actually okay to say to people, do you know what? I really need some help. Please help me. I don't have the energy to look after you at the moment. Is there any chance you can either give me some quiet time or make me a sandwich? Make me a sandwich.
It's interesting, isn't it? Expectations. Bloomberg, maybe we're onto something there. Because it's the expectations you have of yourself and also just a little bit of help from others as well, isn't it?
Mm.
Because we expect so much, and you have been so driven, and you've gone for everything full throttle that you've wanted and made things happen, which is amazing, but yet you can't allow yourself that space to just recharge and to let go a little bit and to relax. So, and to ask for help, because you're so strong. You know, as creatives, we're all we've got to do it. We know we're strong, we're amazing, and we are when we're functioning at our full vibrant energy, but we do need time, downtime as well.
Yeah, if you don't give your brain a rest, then you get a fog. There's a fog. So yeah, rest, or you know, watch a subtitled movie, and don't beat yourself up if you've missed a few lines at the bottom of the screen. It's okay, you can rewind later, you know, and it's okay to fall asleep on the sofa.
Lessons for life.
Mm.
And then so what tends to usually drive you forward when you're down in that burnout space?
Maybe deadlines. So that's not very healthy, really.
Mm.
And what drives me forward? A proverbial kick up the backside, and then get outside, get some fresh air.
What or who kicks you up? That's the whole thing, you know. Who does that? Where does that kick come from?
Me, and my stomach.
I don't actually think that the viewers can hear your stomach. I don't think you have to worry. That's just between us here in the studio.
And the cameraman.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, guys.
The boys behind the cameras might be able to hear you. I can definitely hear it loud and clear, but don't worry, I don't think anybody else can. You're obviously hungry. Can we get her some food, please?
Cooking is my downtime. I love,
yeah?
I love cooking. Recently went and did a Malaysian cookery course at Demuths in Bath.
Yeah.
And that was great fun. And learning how to chop properly. I never knew how to chop.
Can you do those?
So I was taught, so that's one thing crossed off my bucket list. I don't really have a bucket list because that has end of life connotations. Mm-hmm. So I think just do something different every week. I'm not very good at going for walks and exploring my immediate surroundings, but I've inherited an allotment. So that's good, because you have to look after your allotment, otherwise you're kicked off. And so later on today I'll be picking.
And you've got to be the best that you can be at what you do. You can't be kicked off an allotment, right?
The allotment is not my finest. I weed it. I'm surrounded by some phenomenal allotment holders, but I'm learning about gardening. So that I do gently.
You say gardening and comparisons of neighbouring plots, and I think gardening is quite inspired, and there are some very creative gardeners out there. I live next to almost Kew Gardens. I live in Borehamwood in Elstree, and really 3-bedroom semis are fine, but the woman next door has got this immaculate garden that it's so beautifully crafted and artistic, and of course when people come and visit, they're like, couldn't you live in that garden? Like, enjoy my driveway. Yeah. But I think it is something, there's more to it than just the artistry and creativity of gardening, isn't there? It's that kind of earthy time out in the open, fresh air. Reading is quite rewarding because you're it's cathartic, isn't it? You're ripping out the unwanted stuff, and good time for reflection and a bit of focus. Yeah.
Well, speaking of weeds, I rented out my home 4 years ago because I just finished renovating after 10 years. I rented out my home. The person who was going to rent it let me down. She couldn't take it after all. So I stupidly put my home on Facebook, the marketplace, and this chap said, "Oh, it's fantastic, it's perfect." And I said, you know, why do you want to live here? It was a Vietnamese, well, he said he was South Korean gentleman. I said, why do you want to live here? He said, oh, well, I'm an events manager and I need to be near Luton. And I said, well, you could go to Harpenden or Dunstable and get properties for the same price you're paying me. And he says, oh, no, this is perfect, it's lovely. I said, well, it's a lovely home. And he said, well, why are you moving? I said, well, I'm going to live on a canal boat on the Grand Union Canal for a year. I'm going to write my scripts. But the money that I will save in that year will pay for new tiles on my roof because I've done everything else, but that's a big job. And then after 3 months, I had to do an emergency landlady's visit. And my home, my beautiful home that I'd renovated for 10 years, had been turned into a cannabis factory.
Oh, good grief.
So yeah, and I was under suspicion for 2 years, which wasn't nice at all. You know, why did you put your house in Marketplace? Why didn't you go with the letting agents? And I said, well, the reason I didn't go with the letting agents is when you read the small print, they more or less absolve themselves of all responsibility. And so I just thought I'd do it privately. And also, my friend had let me down at the last minute, so I had to get it out there quickly. And I thought I would use social media. But folks, never, ever, ever rent your house out on the Marketplace side of Facebook. I'm not even sure if Marketplace exists anymore. So I re-renovating my home again, still 4 years on, but it was cosmetic damage, it wasn't structural. But I wrote a play about it called You Reap What You Sow.
Oh, nice title.
Which was all about, well, actually it was about clearing my name, whilst educational about what to look out for. This is what a typical cannabis dealer looks like.
Do you know what's funny? My parents had a very similar thing happen, not with their own property, but they live in Golders Green, and next door them was a doctor who lived in America. He's a Mr. Shah, I think it was. He lived in America, and he rented out his property. And my dad was given the duties of just looking over it and just managing it for him in a way. And this lovely lady and her little 4-year-old son from the Philippines, I think it was, came and they rented out the 3-bedroom. It was quite a big 3-bedroom property in Golders Green. And my dad would speak to the guy in America, and you know, everything was going well, and they're very quiet, and we never hear from the child. I hardly ever see them. And then he asked somebody, he saw a few men coming and going, and she said it was her nephew, and he works in the shop. They run a takeaway place. And so he said, can I come and give an inspection, please, because it's my responsibility. And she couldn't for a while, and then eventually she did, and there was one room that she said the nephews were sleeping in and he couldn't go into. He said it smelled very damp. He walked around, left, and thought nothing of it. The next thing, it got raided by the police, full of cannabis everywhere. And my dad was shocked because it was a woman with her little child. So I'm intrigued what you need to look out for.
Well, you don't override
You don't know.
You don't override your instinct, because my instinct was saying, this is all wrong. Everything's wrong. Everything's wrong. Why is he coming here? It's too far away from Luton Airport. I asked to meet his partner. Oh no, she's not available. And also, I used to go past my house and they'd put up shutters without asking my permission and stuff like that. But they were doing me a favour. They were solving a problem for me. Mm-hmm. But I overrode my instinct. So you must never override your instinct. If your gut instinct is saying this is wrong, and every time I've overridden my instinct.
So how do you write about that in the context of script writing then?
It was with humour. It was part play, part me presenting it, and then we interviewed my neighbours. And it was sort of in a creature comforts style.
In the play?
In the play. So the play was me introducing it, and then we would cut to my neighbours being interviewed. And it was fascinating because my neighbours were going, oh yes, we all suspected it was a cannabis factory. We all knew. And I'm thinking, well, you could have told me. And it turned out to be this amazing comedy. We laughed and laughed and laughed all the way through it. And the church had sort of given their blessing for me to have this play. There was about 70 people there, and most of the proceeds went towards helping me renovate my house, as long as local tradespeople were used.
Nice.
Yeah.
So that became a little community play.
It did, and everyone came and helped.
Did you get it in the press and everything locally?
Kept it out of the press. This is the first time. This is the first time that I've told any media outlets about it, because it's so long ago now, and I'm no longer under suspicion, because it was happening so often that it was taking up a lot of police hours, and they were trying to see links, and it happened to a friend of mine as well, so they wondered if we were in cahoots, and it was really uncomfortable. And then it ended when my dad said to me, you know what, you're being harassed, they haven't charged you, they keep questioning you. And he said, I'm going to come down. So this little septuagenarian came down to a meeting with me, to Stevenage, and he sat next to me, and I was questioned for 3 hours, and he gave me strength.
Your dad?
My dad did, and I was never bothered again.
Lovely. And this is the first time you've spoken out about it on any media?
On any media.
So can I say, you heard it first on Creative Hearts.
It's true.
We're very honoured that you've shared your story here. It sounds amazing, but what's beautiful is that you've taken this incredible experience and made it into a play. You've used your craft and your creative passion and made something with it. Is that what got you back into the writing, or?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. Again, it was totally unfortunate experience, but yeah, I started to write again.
From our greatest struggles sometimes come our finest hours. That is totally
yes.
not a direct quote. I think I've combined a few there, but yeah, sounds like you definitely are a testament to that, because each time you've had this adversity, you've come out with a new, refined, amazing, inspiring direction. It's incredible.
Just don't rent your house out. Or if you're going to do it, don't do it via Facebook.
And if you do it, write a book or a play or a film or a something, right?
Or a something.
Or a something. And I suppose the last question is, what do you still want to achieve for yourself? Given this long, amazing, inspiring list of what you've already done, is there, what's next for you?
I would like to see my godchildren do well. I don't have children, but I have 6 godchildren, and I'm guardian to a couple of them. I want to see them do well, and I'd like to think that they could ask me any question, any question at all, and I could give them a good, sensible answer. In terms of my career, there are 2 films inside me. 2 films, and they need to be written. They need to be written. They're quite comical, and what's held me back is I've had a good work year. 2 or 3 years ago, I had a lousy year. I went from earning an inordinate amount of money that I worked very hard for, to £8,000. So, and as freelance, you can't, if you earn below the threshold, you can't sign on. It's up to you to put yourself out there. So I had a really rotten year. It was the year of the Olympics, 2012. But I didn't market myself, and I was sat there resting on my laurels. And this year, I've really, 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 really worked hard. But those films need to be written, because there's some good stories in them.
Well, I hope that you find that fire without having to go through any adversity, and that you can kind of light that flame inside yourself. And I wish you the best of luck in writing those films, and I look forward to hearing more about them. Do keep us informed.
Will do.
And I just wish you all of the best. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. You've been watching Creative Hearts, and come back soon and tune into one of our other episodes for that inspirational spark that you might be looking for to move you forward on your creative journey.